Welcome to Connector, the Bold Life podcast, where we talk all things leadership, innovation, faith, and economic opportunity with real conversations that matter. I'm your host, Kristy Jackson, entrepreneur, speaker, and your go-to connector for stepping into your big, bold purpose. So here, we keep it warm, authentic, and unapologetically real, because playing small is not an option. Today, I have the extreme pleasure of welcoming some trailblazing women that I cannot wait to introduce you to. Helen Lee and Sarah Luem, they are leaders in crew. Now, when I talk about crew, I'm not talking about your breakdancing crew. I'm not talking about your construction work crew. They're going to tell us more about crew. Who wants to get started?
So I'd be happy to. So CREW stands for Commercial Real Estate Women. We're part of an international organization. I think there's 14,000 members around the world. It's mostly based in the U.S., but we're in all over Canada now, and we were expanding into Mexico. Yep. Yeah. And so we've got 14,000 members, like 83 chapters, but we're here on behalf of the CREW St. Louis chapter. We've been around for 40 plus years.
I think 50. Wasn't that what?
I think it was the 40th anniversary, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe we're coming up on 45.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
So we've been around for quite a while, and we're focused on empowering women and elevating women in the commercial real estate industry. So we have members from every aspect of commercial real estate you can imagine, anything that helps a building kind of come out of the ground. So that includes architects, attorneys,
Developer, bankers, engineers.
Yeah, that's what's so
manager,
fascinating
just
about
the
crew.
whole,
The whole gamut.
Yes.
Right.
So before we kind of get more into crew, I'd love for each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about the work that you do specifically in the commercial real estate industry and your role with crew.
Yeah. Do you want to go first, Helen?
Yeah. So my name is Helen Lee. I'm an architect. I've been in this profession for over 40 years now. So my role at CREW is that I chair the DEI committee, and which was started about 4 years ago. And so we've been trying to bring not only more women into our, in commercial real estate, but also more diversity, whether it's, race, age, rural versus, urban. So anyways, we're just looking for more diversity.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Sarah, what about you?
And my name's Sarah Luem. I'm an attorney at a law firm in Clayton called Cape Sokol. And we're a full-service law firm, but where I focus my energies is on corporate work. So I do a lot of mergers and acquisitions and helping people, form their companies and then buy and sell companies. And then I also obviously do a lot of real estate work. So everything from helping someone buy or sell property, leasing, easement issues, that sort of thing. I've been in the industry coming up on 15 years now. And I joined CREW maybe 8 years ago and was kind of all in. It became sort of my network in St. Louis because I didn't know a lot of people before I started as an attorney here. And I'm now currently for 2025, I'm the president of our local chapter.
Yeah. I recently attended a networking event with crew, and I believe it was called Commercial Real Estate 101.
That's exactly it.
Something that I've never seen before. I really enjoyed that event because you practically took us through the process of acquiring commercial real estate from the inception of the idea to the very, very last step. And had I seen those steps written on a piece of paper or on a flyer, or you led me to a website, I would have gotten so lost. But you had actual representation of women that worked in those particular fields to talk to us about that step and what it took to get to the next step. So when I think about a commercial real estate project, because I actually am thinking about developing a commercial real estate
which is very exciting.
Project. It's so exciting. But I have that visual of all of the steps that it takes, or all of the parts of that process, because of how you represented that experience. So I I see the power in organizations like Crew, right, for communicating what we need to know behind the scenes, per se, about the commercial real estate industry.
What's funny to me about that event is we started it maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it was intended to be outreach really to college students and even some high school students to say, like, hey, this is an organization you can learn about and even get involved in. We have student memberships. We also have scholarships out there for people who are in either an undergraduate program or a graduate program that focuses on any of the qualified fields of commercial real estate, and there's like 40. So it's a very broad scholarship opportunity. But we wanted to get the word out for that, so we started this event. And what's funny to me is that as more members kind of came and sat in, they started saying, well, this shouldn't just be for college students. Even as a professional who's been doing this for many years, I often don't know the entire process. I know my little piece of it, and maybe the one or two, components, other people that I deal with. But so I don't know if you noticed, in the back of the room, there were maybe 20 of our members sitting back there wanting to learn about it too, because it's such a diverse industry.
Yeah.
It's always a good reminder about all the different steps, and also, it's women supporting women when we do these groups, and to see their point of view as they talk about the role as a developer, the role as an engineer or furniture. I mean, there's just so many different roles that, like sometimes as an architect, we're so micro-focused on what we do that we forget that there's a lender, that there's a lawyer on the project, that there's, remediation on the site. Those are sometimes so early on that we don't see that part. So I think that's the beauty about Crew, the commercial real estate 101.
Yeah, it's truly a collaborative process, and you can kind of see it all. This topic is really close to my heart. My grandfather owned property. We had 3 apartment buildings. And when a developer came in, which shall remain nameless, came in and, purchased the property, but he was older, and he didn't maximize the amount that he could have gotten to sell. And there was pressure to sell. And, he was just like, let's just do it. So I feel like I have to redeem that situation. Like, we are made to be real estate owners and to own property. And I want to redeem that for my family. But I have no idea, and I'm sure there are many women that are in our audience that know that they want to get into real estate, commercial real estate, but they have no idea what the first step is. So I want to ask you, when you think about the commercial real estate industry, like, what are the most common barriers that keep women from entering that space?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's a pretty male-dominant industry, and even though I'm just a little part of it in architecture, it's always been men-driven, and so for us to put our foot into the door, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of guts, a lot of, I belong, knowing that you belong in the space, having that confidence to say that you belong in that space. So, it's, and I see this from a perspective of being in this business for more than 40 years, when it was really pretty male dominant. So that's just, the one thing. But I think it's just getting easier now, and I think with groups like this that support women and minorities, I can go to people in this group and ask questions, and I think that just helps, and that opens up the, commercial real estate.
Yeah, just kind of breaking into that, old boys network, for lack of a better term. And there's other industry organizations in St. Louis that are great and that are doing amazing things. What helped me feel comfortable personally, especially as a younger professional when I had gotten started, was having a group that was, we welcome men as members, but it is, primarily women in our group. And it just made it easier for me to kind of dip my toe in a network, because kind of back to your question of what's stopping people, sometimes it's just not knowing people in the industry. And it is a collaborative process. And so if you're just starting out and you don't know an architect, you don't know a lender, you don't know a good broker, it can be incredibly overwhelming.
Yeah.
But, if you get to know a broker or a lender, they can start then connecting you with the right people. So I think it's just that network that a lot of women are missing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really one of the reasons why we created this podcast. Like, everyone doesn't have a mentor or that network that they can plug into to get this information, right? And to know where to go to connect with people that they might have questions, about around particular industries. But I think what's unique about spaces that women create is that nurturing and that trust that, especially in industries like this. I think trust is a big barrier too as it relates to like getting into real estate, especially if you don't have a lot of knowledge. And we've seen so many stories of women being taken advantage of as it relates to, something being sold out from under them or being charged more, by various contractors that a male, client might have been charged. So there are just so many. Trust is a huge piece of this. So I'm just seeing the value in a community like Crew that you can kind of, talk to each other. And even I've heard you guys say that you collaborate with each other and ask questions of each other because you don't know everybody's role. You know yours, but, you're still learning some of the others.
What you were just bringing up, Crew, our national organization has a lot of resources, So when I was looking to do a talk about diversity, I was able to get in there and find that, not only is, there's less women in the industry, but the pay is 30% less than their male counterparts, And
it's actually gotten worse in the last few years based on their research. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes. It's so we have our resources with, Crew Network, and the pay, the ability to move up, So if you start at the same level, as you move up, men, are advancing twice the speed as women.
Yeah.
So those are all data that we have. And so because I have that, whenever I go out for a project, I support, women, minority-owned businesses, and I was given the opportunity just recently for a maternity clinic. And, so our engineers were all women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses. I'm just trying to, make space for other minorities and women in construction.
That's huge. That is huge. That is a lesson that I think we can apply to any industry, right? Any space that make space. Because when you see you have to see someone, right, to see that it's possible. And so organizations like Crew, hopefully this podcast is like that space where you can hear, you can say, oh, I didn't think about this as an option for me. Now I see that this is possible. So that brings me to a question to your younger selves, your little Helens and your little Sarahs. Was this always a dream to work in real estate or to be a lawyer or to be an architect? Was that always a dream as a child?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not to be in real estate. I know the real estate thing I kind of came to later. I think I always had thought about being an attorney. And I don't know if that's just because, I was good at school. And so that's something people just kind of, you should be a doctor or a lawyer.
Yeah.
So I probably it was a lack of creativity probably on my part.
I think attorneys are very creative.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. And then I started working on with a real estate developer right after I took the bar. Actually, I wasn't even licensed yet. I was waiting for my bar results, and I just really enjoyed what I was doing. It was exciting and something different every day. And there's also just no thrill like driving by something that you worked on and being able to point at a building and say, I helped with that.
Yes. I know. That really makes sense. But I know. I mean, I've always wanted to be an architect. In high school, my brother was taking drafting and I was taking home ed.
Yes.
And I just thought, well, like, why is that, And even in architecture school, I mean, that's like 50 years ago now for me, 40 years ago, yeah, 45. But anyways, it was my class. We had 30% women in my first architecture class, and by the time we graduated, it was 10%. Because it was hard. And then my first job, I was the only woman in the office, but I had a great, mentor there. They saw something in me, and they really helped me figure out what I wanted to do in architecture. So here I am. Townley started in 1995, so we're on our 30th year this year.
Wow.
I know. So
Congratulations.
In St. Louis,
Yeah.
So, and before that, I mean, I worked in New York for about 10 years, and, we moved to London, and then now we're here. So
That's awesome.
that's my journey. And when we moved to St. Louis, we were in New York. So when we came here, we knew nobody, And so I wish I knew about Crew back then, because I think it would have helped get us jobs or help us meet people at least,
So when you talk about like the power of mentoring and networking with Crew, can you think of any success stories that with members that have been a result of like mentorship or providing those networking opportunities?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. And we've recently started something in our weekly news or our monthly newsletter where we're featuring some of these stories. And it's hard to call out any one in particular, but I will say one story that comes to mind, and then Helen can share one. But we have a member who recently, sort of through Crew, had gotten a really, really exciting new opportunity she's still based here, but the company is based in the Southwest, and they were looking to grow around the country. And so they were looking to kind of expand their network of professionals who could help. And this member of ours put together like a roster of women who could help out. And they immediately started referring work to all these women around in Crew. So that was a very exciting opportunity that came from someone just trying to get the word out about some of the professionals in our group.
I told you I attended the networking event, and I do have a commercial real estate project that I'm at the inception of. I took the notes that you guys offered at that event that has the pictures, the emails. I took notes on the back, and I keep that in my purse as like my little real estate cheat sheet.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it matters. It is such a valuable resource, especially if you don't know where to start, right? Yeah. So I could see that really, really being helpful and impactful, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing. When I'm ready, I don't know even when I'm ready to ask those questions of those persons, but I have it when I'm ready, right? So, Helen, can you share one?
Well, personally, we've gotten jobs through our connection through Crew. I meet people and they say, "Hey, we're actually looking for an architect. Would you be interested in this project?" And that was the project for the maternity clinic up in Ferguson. That was through somebody at Crew. And I think the other thing that I love about Crew is that I know when members are like they got laid off, I mean, they just sent out an email through our Crew network, and they said, "Hey, I just got laid off. I'm looking for a job in this. Does somebody know of anything?" And more times than not, she'll have like 3 or 4, 5 leads just from sending this little, through our network. And I think that's just amazing, and there's something about everybody's willing to help somebody, because who knows, like I might be out of a job,
You
and
never know.
And I'm looking for something,
and
and I think that's how supportive our organization is. I think that's what's so amazing about it. And sometimes the jobs aren't even just locally, I mean, we're networked through other cities, and if somebody's looking to move to Tampa, like they can reach out and and find help.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I imagine that this is a pretty competitive industry. And I really love hearing that you all have found a way to create a culture within crew that there is true collaboration and that there's true support over competition. Because,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
you're
I
all,
love that you're saying that because so
Yeah.
every president of our chapter has like a word of the year. And my word this year is community, but it really comes from, I didn't bring that water bottle today, but on one of my other water bottles, I have this sticker that to me is crew in a nutshell, and it's community over competition. And that's really, to me, what makes this organization special. And I think, especially for women, there's this idea that women can be very competitive or, you know, not support one another. And crew has been the opposite of that for me. And it doesn't even matter, you know, we have groups where the architects can get together and talk about issues facing them. The attorneys can get together and talk about issues facing them. We want to collaborate. We want to support each other. And there's nothing competitive about it. We, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats.
It does. It actually does. Well, even I'm glad you mentioned that there's, you know, constant professional development in particular areas. So how is the landscape changing currently with women in the field and the opportunities that lie ahead?
Just in architecture, you know, it's changed fundamentally for the better. You know, 'cause when I went to school, you know, 10% graduating class. Now, I was just talking to one of my interns from last year. She's in an architecture program that is 80% women. So there are so many more women coming into this profession, you know, and there are so many organizations like in architecture, the AIA, they have their own women group, you know. So anyways, we're just seeing so many more women, and that's like in everything, like engineering. I see more women. You know, developers. You know, we have a couple of really strong women developer in our crew group. You know, so I think seeing, you know, the heads of these, you know, developers, and you know, I mean, I think it just shows that there's just a lot of mentorship going on in our profession.
Is key,
And, you know, and also like when you can see someone in a position that you want to be in, you know, you can imagine yourself doing that. And I think that really helps.
Yeah. And I think we were kind of talking earlier that there's like kind of different generations of, you know, women coming into the industry. And there's, you know, the people who have been around a little longer and have seen it go from like almost exclusively male to now being, you know, a lot more even in the number of professionals that are women versus men. And then there's maybe sort of my generation that is sort of used to that, and we're trying to continue to help elevate women and refer business. What I think is interesting with the younger generation is I think it's almost changed a little because they don't know different. They just know it's sort of, you know, there's a lot more women in the industry. And what I think, you know, is important to focus on, and I talk about this at my work as well as in crew, is to really focus on supporting this younger generation of women. And ironically, I think a lot of that involves supporting the partners in their lives, you know, the men or women in their lives.
Yes.
Because if we're not supporting those men, if we're not allowing men to take paternity leave or to take time off to go drive their kid to the soccer games, if we're not supporting that, then we're really not supporting the women, because I think in my generation, sort of a lot of the work fell on the mom's shoulders or the wife's shoulders, even though she also was a working professional.
That's right.
And I think all the time, I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't have the most amazing husband who does unload a lot of that burden from me. So I think that's, you asked how the industry's changing. I think we need to focus on helping these younger women who are coming up so that they can stay in the industry.
Definitely partnership.
Yes.
Partnership.
Yeah. And I'm in partnership with my husband, so, he's
literally,
he knows, you know, like what it takes, you know, like for our family life and for our work life, you know, and it was, you know, it's a struggle when we first started our business, you know, because there's, you know, we were partners in life, partners in business.
Yes, I can relate. My husband and I are the same. Yes, people say, how do you manage your marriage and your ministry and your business? I always say it's a dance. It's always a dance. We've been married. We'll have been married 29 years.
Oh my gosh.
And this year, I said we will have been. We will be married 29 years. I think he's going to stay married to me the rest of this year. I hope that he will. But we'll be married 29 years this year. And it has been a journey through entrepreneurship, just trying to balance the family and timing and the investment and then working together and then coming home and, nurturing our marriage. And we've been able to do it because we're both passionate about service, and that's really what we look at our business as an opportunity to serve. We own a media company, and I have a creative consulting company and a women's community called SheCan Connect Global Network, and so it's the dance. So I can totally relate.
It sounds like we all have great partners.
We do. Yeah. It takes that, and I was talking to another guest about that. Women that feel like they can do it themselves or they have to do it alone. I think that we have more opportunity now to collaborate with each other. It's just finding the right community, as you said. That community is a value, and being able to find access to that community where you can actually collaborate and vulnerably share the questions, that you have or the needs that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my, I was talking about this at our holiday party, actually, in a speech I gave. But I think one of the things that makes this group so powerful is not just that we're there for each other professionally and we refer business and that sort of thing. Obviously, that's great. And that's a, primary mission of the organization. But we also support each other when we're going through hard life events, when people get laid off, when, people's children are going through things. Like, we're there for each other through that. And then that makes it easier to be there for all the other stuff.
Yeah. I call that life is lifing, right?
Yeah.
But that leads me to my next question with just challenges that are in the industry itself. We're in an interesting time now, and, people are really considering if they want to stay in their current careers, what other options are really available to them. So for someone that's considering getting into commercial real estate, what are some of the challenges that they should be aware of, kind of know what you're getting into?
I think that knowing what you're getting into, I would recommend talking to people, like if you're thinking about, going into like brokerage, for example, I would go talk to a broker because that there are very unique, things that the brokers have to deal with. Some which are great and some which are a little more difficult. But getting information and learning about that, I think is important. So just talking to multiple people who do what you're thinking about doing and really understanding the pros and the cons. So you go into whatever you're doing with eyes wide open.
Yeah. And there is the kind of financial cycle, there are dips and lows, and knowing when to get in, like, I don't know, there's so much, uncertainty right now. And I don't know, is there a recession coming or is there not? Are we, so it's just knowing when to get in, like not to come in at the high side when prices are so high. And, like for me, it's always about the construction, like everyone is so busy now, so construction cost is high. And then, with the tariffs coming in, we don't know how that's going to affect the construction industry. Is it going to make it too expensive to get in? And then what are the interest rates, because as interest rates climb, the projects are going to get more expensive. And so it really is kind of, knowing what, where our financials are going at this time, what the economy's doing at this time.
Right. Because on the flip side of that actually, ironically creates some opportunities too. There's been in the industry, like people will talk about, there's a lot of money that's been sitting on the sidelines because the existing inventory is so highly priced because there's just not a lot of inventory out there on these, on like Class A office buildings, for example, that are, low vacancy. So, and with interest rates where they are, also a lot of people are not, using the money that they have. And so I do think, while I'm not hoping for any of this, but, on the flip side of some of the issues we're anticipating, there's also opportunity.
Right.
Mhm. Are there any exciting building projects that are coming that you've heard about or that you know that are coming? And it doesn't have to be in St. Louis. I know maybe some things are proprietary. You can't share everything. But, maybe it's something you've seen afar or close to home. Are there any exciting projects that are looming that you know about that you could share?
Yeah. Well, the airport project,
Mm,
that's going to be billions of dollars of construction right there.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a big one, and we had tried to get in on that one, and
Yeah.
and no luck there.
Yeah.
But they're using a HOK. It's a local architecture firm. Is going to be
Yeah.
the main architect there, and I think they put together a great local team for that project.
That's awesome.
So
Our airports remind me of like destinations. Certain ones you go to, it's like, oh, you can rest, you can shop, you can eat, So that's exciting to hear that those projects are coming. I think about like the Sphere in Las Vegas. Like that's a really, really cool space. Like, are there any innovations that are in this industry that are just kind of making design and commercial real estate more exciting?
the project south of the Arch.
Mm.
What is it
Yeah, I was trying to
called?
remember the building that's
name.
going down there, not the Met Square
Yeah.
building.
But
yeah.
I think that's going to be an exciting project
Yeah.
because it's that whole area that's like south of the Arch between the river and Broadway. Good Development is looking at quite a few buildings down there, and they wanted to make it a innovation and technology center for construction. So they're looking for. I think they signed their first tenant.
Oh,
And
awesome.
so they want to. They don't want us to be building the way we have. Like 2x4s on the construction site put together. They want to do panelized systems, or you put together a toilet block and then they just get dropped into a high-rise building. So they're looking at more innovations in construction. And that's a way of cutting costs.
Yeah.
And that's a way of reducing labor by doing a lot of this work in the factories. So, hopefully, this is what, a 10-year long project, and but that area is wonderful because it's got transportation all around. There's Highway 55 and 4460.
Yeah.
There's the railroads. There's the barge. So it's so if they can make this work, it's going to transform.
Yeah.
St.
Yeah, and
Louis,
it's that area just sort
Missouri.
of south of the Arch. And so, yeah, it could really transform that entire area too. Like it's going to have a huge impact on what's going on down there.
It's almost like you guys are reading my mind. I'm just wondering, like, what makes a commercial area like thrive? Like, what is like the ideal combination of access, or in that particular space?
Yeah. Well, I think that project it's really interesting because not only are they, thinking manufacture, but there'll be warehouse, but they're also going to bring in housing. So there's apartment buildings planned there. There are retail, street front retail to activate the streets. It's like a more holistic view of how you make
like live,
an
work
area.
spaces. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Live, work, play spaces. Yeah. That I could see that as an innovation that would be important, especially as people are prioritizing a more balanced life, really, and wanting to work closer to where they live and all of that. And that's very cool to hear that the role of innovation in the development in these areas too. Yeah, that's cool. Any predictions for the future of in real estate that just kind of the way things are going, right? What do you see coming ahead?
I think, from the stuff I see, I think it's a lot of what you were just talking about, this kind of live, work, play idea, and just really, helping have, spaces that can be activated where people are, have activities to do. They can go shopping. They live there. Their kids go to school nearby. Like, just really making kind of like city centers around town. I think of what's going on with the Steinberg Group is doing out in Chesterfield with the redevelopment of the Chesterfield Mall, and that's sort of their vision for that. And I think that's going to continue to be a trend because I think people want to have amenities by where they live.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think for me, like, I would really love to see a stronger downtown, because St. Louis is so fractured. There's so many municipalities and everyone's leaving the city. But I think to have a strong downtown benefits the whole region, and and it just it makes me so sad to see businesses leave downtown.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of our audience members may not even live in St. Louis, but you can share that sentiment. You can see that anywhere across the country, that those cities that have a thriving downtown, their tourism is up. It's just a more engaging and exciting place to visit. So I totally agree with you. So I'm hoping that someone that's been listening today has heard something that has inspired them or informed them or maybe connected them in some way. But I want to end with some advice. What advice would you give to women looking to make their mark in commercial real estate?
So for me, the advice that comes to mind is to focus on finding both mentors and sponsors. And I think there's a lot of focus on mentorship right now, and that's great. And mentorship is incredibly important. We have a mentorship program in Crew that is very successful and people get a lot out of. And that's amazing. And that, helps kind of elevate women and helps women focus on what they need to do to get where they want to go in their career. But I think especially women also need a sponsor. They need to find people in the community who will go out and stand up for them, who will advocate for them when they're not in the room. So mentorship's about, helping someone personally grow. Sponsorship is about going out there and actually helping get it done for them. So I think sponsorship's as important as mentorship, and I would encourage people to, go out, meet people, and be looking for both.
Yeah, I think that's really important, just to make sure you're always expanding your network, because for us, just meeting the right people at the right time, and that's how we got involved with working at the Missouri Botanical Garden Visitor Center, just having met the architect at it, at Wash U and nurturing that relationship, because you never know who you meet is going to lead to another job, but you just have to keep nurturing those relationships.
That's right. That's right.
And just at that point, then you get to be involved in some really fun projects.
Well, we like to call out connectors here on the Connector podcast, and those are women that are standing up for women, speaking their names in rooms that they're not, being willing to make those real connections. And so I want to take the time to call out Miss Helen Lee, because Helen Lee has been that for Kristy Jackson in ways that she does not realize. Helen and I served on a board together many years ago, and so we recently reconnected. But I will say the work in this short time that we have reconnected that you have done to make sure that you are making space for our students to be exposed to real estate, to careers that they may not have access to, it does not go unnoticed. I am so appreciative of it, and I just want to publicly thank you for being a sponsor, not just being the one to say, hey, come, but making sure that there is a way. She followed up with me and said, hey, you didn't call me back. You didn't give me back.
I was harassing her.
I love it. Sometimes you need
That's
that,
amazing.
right? You need that. But that's what we encourage our audience members to do. Be that connector for someone else, because you never know we are here having this podcast conversation, right? As a result of this reconnection.
Yeah.
We just don't know who's going to be listening to this podcast that now will be inspired to connect with Crew. And there's so much more to come. So it just speaks to the power of what you're saying, just standing up and being that voice and making room for someone. So thank you both today for taking time to have this conversation with me today. I know that our audience members were inspired, informed. It's important for us to be inspired, to get information, but be challenged to do something with that information. So if you love today's episode, do me a favor, subscribe, leave a review, and be a connector by sharing this with someone who you know needs to have this message. And remember, your bold life is waiting. It's just waiting for you to say yes to it. You've heard the challenges. You've heard the opportunities today. So say yes to it. And until next time, stay bold, stay fearless, and be a connector.